Hello there. Thanks for tuning in to my Flutter talk, and we'll be going over the introduction into it. It's very exciting to see all the new developments in the world of mobile apps. And Flutter is one of the things that's causing a lot of buzz in the community. So let's find out what it's all about. Before we do that, allow me to quickly introduce myself. My name is Alistair Holmes, and I'm a Flutter mobile app developer that's currently working for Cubed. I'm also a co-organizer for Flutter Zimbabwe and Flutter Africa. I used to be a native Android app developer before Flutter came along, but I'll go over some of the things that made me pursue Flutter more fully. So let's jump into it. So in this talk, we're going to look at 5 main points. What is Flutter? Why we're going to use Flutter, setting up your Flutter development environment, creating a Flutter app, and then running your app on your device. So the first part, what is Flutter? Now I like to imagine that you're in a situation. Let's say that you are developing an Android app. You spent a lot of time learning about Android app development. You learned maybe Java and Kotlin, and eventually you managed to get to the stage where you completed your app, you launched it, you put it on the Play Store, and you've got users. People are using it and they like your app. Now your app is so popular that other people come along and say, hey, your app is nice on Android, but I've got an iPhone. Are you able to give us some support? Show us some love? How far? Will we get a version for iOS? So you might respond and say, yeah, no, sure, the iOS app, yeah, it's in development. Yeah, it's coming soon. We'll get it to you when it's ready. We'll let you know. But maybe you only know Android development. You put so much time and effort into making that Android app. Now you have to make an iOS app. So eventually more people start coming back to you and they start asking you for another iOS app, and you've been putting it off, but eventually you decide, okay, I'll make the iOS app. So you go out, you buy your iPhone, you buy a MacBook to test your apps, and then you have to learn Swift, which is the programming language that you'll need to learn in order to make iOS apps. As time goes on, you complete a few tutorials, and then eventually you build your iOS app and you put it on the Play Store for your users to download it. Now you think you've made everyone happy, but then you realize that you have more issues coming along the way. Because you are supporting Android and iOS, it means that you have to support multiple devices, which means many different screen sizes, different versions of the operating system. So like for Android, right now we're looking forward to getting Android 11. But you'll find that there's many people that are using versions that are way older. Maybe right from Jelly Bean, Marshmallow, Android Nougat, all the way right up to where we are today. So all those devices have to be supported. So yeah, it's quite stressful being an app developer, having to support all these things. So this is a problem that many people have faced. If you want to support multiple operating systems and devices, then it means that you have to support multiple code bases. You're going to have one for Android and a separate one for iOS. Secondly, you also have to learn different programming languages. So like we said, for Android, maybe you learned Java or Kotlin. For iOS, you'd have to learn Swift. And then the last problem that we saw was that you have to support many screen sizes and different versions in the operating system. And this can lead to inconsistency because maybe your app will look different on one device, or maybe a feature will work nicely on a particular platform, but it won't work on another. So Google, the Flutter team, stepped in and created Flutter to solve that issue. So Flutter is a Google toolkit that is used for building beautiful UIs, and these are natively compiled into applications for mobile, web, and desktop. And the great thing is that you can do this from a single code base. So if you're starting a new project, why should you use Flutter? Well, I've got 4 main points here. And as mentioned already, we spoke about the first one. It's cross-platform and it is compatible for mobile apps, so that includes Android and iOS, the web, and desktop, and you are able to support all these platforms with one code base. And it makes use of the Dart programming language. So you just need to learn Dart, which will be the programming language to support all those platforms, which makes life easier on you. The second point is hot reload. Now, hot reload is a nice feature that allows you to make changes in your app and they'll show up in milliseconds. So this means that you can rapidly build native Android native interfaces in minutes. So this is much better in my opinion compared to Android development. At times you'll make a few changes, you hit run, it has to compile your APK, and then by the time you're able to view your app and just see like a small change that you made, you've wasted a lot of time. So hot reload is a feature that allows you to develop quickly and also helps with performance. The third point of why we should use Flutter is because it's open source. All the code and all the architecture is visible to everybody on GitHub. So this means that you can go through the code, you can see if there's any malware or anything that can affect your security in your app, you can go through it. There's many people that use Flutter and contribute to the code base. So this means that if there are any issues, those issues will be resolved. And also, it allows for customizability. So if you have a certain feature that you like to work on or a certain UI element, you can customize it according to your needs. So that's very appealing about Flutter. The fourth point is the vibrant community that's around Flutter. You can find many resources for courses, articles, repositories on GitHub, and also answers on Stack Overflow. Because no doubt when you're starting out in Flutter, you might come across issues. So it's nice to know that when you are able to start, there's a lot of information ready for you to have a look at. So those are some of the reasons why you'd use Flutter. So let's say you're going to give Flutter a go, and in order to do that, you need to set up your Flutter development environment. So we're also going to go over 3 parts that are involved in setting up your Flutter development environment. The first one is your operating system. Now you are able to run Flutter on Windows, Linux, and Mac OS. I've just included the Windows specifications here because majority of people use Windows. You would need to have a laptop or a computer with a minimum of 4 gigs of RAM, and 8 gigs of RAM is recommended. And also on your hard drive you need about 2 gigabytes of space minimum to be able to install everything. Now this requirement of 8 gigs of RAM that's recommended, this is mainly for if you intend to run your Flutter app on an Android emulator. You can get away with running your Flutter app with 4 gigs of RAM if you are running it on a physical device. So once you've got the hardware requirements out of the way, the next part is to actually get the Flutter SDK. So you can do this by visiting this website, flutter.dev/docs/getting-started, and then you'll find the Flutter zip file that you can download, and then you'd have to create a path to your Flutter SDK in order to execute the Flutter commands from your terminal or command prompt. So this is great because it allows you to be able to run Flutter commands from anywhere on your device without having to keep running or entering your admin password or your sudo admin password in order to make changes. The third part is to install your IDE or editor. So this would be either Android Studio or VS Code, depending on which one you prefer, although Android Studio is a recommended IDE for Flutter development. Once you have Android Studio installed, you would download and install the Flutter and Dart plugins. These will allow you to start developing your Flutter apps. And then when you want to run your app, you need to enable ADB debugging on your physical phone if you're using one, or if you're using an Android emulator, you won't really need to use this, but you'll be able to run it. So let me quickly show you what you need to do in order to install the Flutter SDK. So here we've got the Windows install, and as we went over the system requirements, you see that you can actually use Windows 7 as well, but it has to be 64-bit. So this is the Flutter SDK that's talking about. You'll click on it and download it. At the time of this recording, the current version is 1.20.2, and then as you go down, you read all the instructions for getting set up for Flutter development. Now, due to time, unfortunately, I won't be able to go over all of this. And as a developer, I'm sure that you also feel that there is quite a bit of information that's here, and we always look for shortcuts. So I'm happy to say that there is an easy way out. If you go on to GitHub, there's a guy called Yazid who actually made a Flutter installer. Now this installer allows you to install Android Studio and the Flutter SDK without having to go through this long process that you have here on the Flutter documentation site. And the nice thing is that this installer is actually built with Flutter. So you're using Flutter in order to build Flutter. So that's pretty cool. So some of the features that it has is that it's got a nice user interface, so it's very easy to install everything. And it supports all three platforms, Windows, Mac, and Linux. So because of time, I think I'll just show you how you can do it with this particular software instead of the documentation. So I am using Linux, so I'll go to latest release. Now the current latest release is version 0.0.5, and it has Linux and Mac OS. Now if you're on Windows, you would have to use version 4. Alright, so here on version 4, if you check the assets, here you have Windows, and it's about 9 megs there. So this zip file, you can download it. Once you download it and extract it, you would get this. So I'll open the Flutter installer. Alright, there you go. So you can click on Get Started, and then it will give the terms of service. You can click Agree. You customize it and you tell it where you want it to download all the files. You can specify your path here. And then you can select the apps that you want. So I've got Android Studio selected, but you could install VS Code or IntelliJ. And also Git. Git is great because you can have built-in version control as well. So you just hit next. It gives you a summary of everything that will be downloaded, and then you click install and it will start installing. Now I've got everything already set up, so once your download finishes, it will put everything in the file that you specified it to be downloaded in. And here you have your Android Studio file for your IDE. You can install it from there. And also you have your Flutter directory with all the Flutter code in it as well. So this is the quickest way of getting set up for Flutter. And when we go back to my slides, we have set up everything that we need for Flutter development. Now, I know with data in Zim and in other places, it might be very expensive to download. So I think if you want to budget, you need about maybe 2 to 3 gigabytes of data to be able to get everything up and running for Flutter development. You might need a little bit more if you're also going to be downloading an Android emulator, but yeah, around that range there. So we've got everything set up for Flutter. Let's create a Flutter app. So with Android Studio installed, you open it and then make sure that all your plugins for Flutter are installed. If you want to check to make sure that you have everything, you can run Flutter Doctor, and this will run a check to make sure that you've got everything set up in order to start doing Android development. So for me on my computer, you can see that I'm on the stable channel for Flutter, and I'm using version 1.20.1 on Linux. So Flutter Doctor will run. It will check to make sure that you've got Android Studio installed. It will make sure that you've got all the licenses set up and also all the plugins installed. So for me, as you can see, I've got a number of Android Studio versions installed. I've got my toolchain installed. So all these check marks show that everything is okay. I don't really use IntelliJ for Flutter, so that's why these are not available. And then I've got a connected device online at the moment, which is my emulator. Alright, so let's go back to Android Studio. So in order to create your Flutter app, you need to first make sure, as I said, that your plugins are installed. So here under your settings and plugins, make sure that Dart and Flutter is installed. Once that's set up, you'll have to restart your IDE for the changes to reflect. Then we go to File, New Flutter Project. So Flutter application selected by default, so we'll hit Next. And then you can specify the name of your Flutter app. I'll just leave it at the default as Flutter app. Here it will ask for the Flutter SDK path. So this path is the one where your the Flutter files that you downloaded are going to reflect. So mine, I've already got a Flutter folder for that, but you can specify yours. Where you're going to have your Flutter app, where it's going to be created. Mine will be in my Android Studio projects folder, and you can create a description for your Flutter application, but I'll just leave the default there. We'll hit Next. I'll keep the defaults there as well, and I'll keep this checkmark for Android X selected because with Flutter it's advisable to use Android X as you're taking advantage of the new APIs in Android. You can also select Kotlin support for Android code because you can actually integrate like Kotlin code, and you can have like a hybrid with Flutter as well if need be, and also the same with Swift. But I don't really need this for the demo app, so I'm not going to include these. And then we'll select Finish. So it's going to create the Flutter project. While this is taking place, let me quickly show you. Let me quickly show you how everything looks. So everything is loaded up now for the Flutter app. Let me close this. Okay. So once your folder opens, you have your directory here for your Flutter app. You click on the down arrow to expand it. Now this is the file structure of a Flutter app. You've got your Dart tools, you've got the Android folder, an iOS folder, and this lib folder. You've got your tests and all the other files that you need. So for Android development, for Flutter development, sorry, most of your code is going to be here in the lib folder and in the main.dart file. Now this main.dart file is the first file that you get when you create your Flutter app. Now all this is just a default code. It's like a hello world app. So what I'm going to do is I've got my emulator here up and running. Let me bring it across. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit run, and then you're going to see how this demo app looks for Flutter. And while that is running, you see that there's a lot of comments here in the file. So I'll just try and clean things up so it's easy for us to see what's going on here. So I'm just going to replace all the comments. Ooh, okay. Dot / star. Right. Really? Oh, okay. Live coding. I'll just do it manually. I forgot the shortcut that I'd use to remove the comments, so I'll just remove that. That for now. And these. So you'll see on the right hand side, I've actually run the app, and this is the default Flutter demo page. Okay, so I'll just leave that for now. So here on the right hand side, I've got the emulator running, the Flutter default homepage, and this is basically a counter app. So there's a plus button here, so whenever I click on it, it will automatically increase. On the left hand side, this is all the code that is just built for this particular screen. Let me just finish cleaning up these comments so that you can see nicely. Okay, I think this is good for now. Alright, so basically with the Dart programming language, it's very similar to what you have like with JavaScript. You have functions, you can use the same principles like object-oriented principles that you use like for Java. You can also use that here in Dart. So the way it starts off is there's this main function, and it's gonna run our app, and the app that is running is taking from my app this particular function at the bottom, and here we have the class my app, which is what is being run here, and it's extending a stateless widget. Now in Flutter makes use of widgets, and these widgets are little building blocks that you put together in order to build your screen for your Flutter app. So let us make a few changes to this demo app in our code and see like the features like hot reload, and then we'll try and add a few other things to the app as well. So the first thing that we have here is our build function, and this builds the screen that we have here. And then our layout for home is taken from my home page, which is this at the bottom here. So first what we're going to do is let's change this name Flutter demo homepage in the app bar to something a bit more to our liking. So let's just call this Flutter Android demo. right? And then we have this lightning bolt in the corner. This is our reload function. Now notice how quickly it takes to load. Yeah, that was fast. So that's the hot reload feature in action. So we can see how quickly we can make changes to an app. But let's try and make a few more changes. For example, here we have the theme data, which shows like this blue color here. So let's change it to something like red. Enter, and then hit hot reload, and there we've changed the color automatically like that. Now there's a lot of code here that's related to the counter app, but let's try and see if we can change a few things. So for example, here we have this text. You have pushed the button this many times. We can change this as well, and maybe we'll make it the button was tapped this many times. Okay, so I've changed it to the button was tapped this many times. I'll hit hot reload and it's automatically changed. So as you can see, you can quickly make changes to your Flutter app. Now we're just getting started, and it's not enough time for me to go into all the depths and details about Flutter development, but for now I'll just make a few edits. Basically what I'm going to do is I want to remove this floating action button in the corner like that, and we're just going to make something simple. And what I have in mind is to have maybe just a few text widgets and just put like some info about us. So I'll replace this with my name is Alistair, right? And then hit hot reload. Let's change there. And then this text, I'm going to remove the counter that's here, and instead I'm going to put I made my first Flutter app. Alright, and as you can see, we've made our changes and they're reflecting. So let's say I want to add another text widget right below this one. So I'll just copy this and then paste it there, and then I'll write here this seems pretty easy. And really cool, right? Hit hot reload, and there you go. So these are text widgets, and you can see that they're showing up in a column view, which is this column right here. So they're going to be displayed vertically. Now if, let's say, I had to change this to a row, then they would be displayed side by side like this. Now it's giving an error because the text is going right across the screen, but this is showing you how you can use different widgets to lay out your Flutter app. Okay, so this is just a quick demo to show you everything that you need to get started with Android development. I'm gonna close this out, go back to my slides. So we have created our first Flutter app. Now we've covered a lot in this talk, and let's go over some of the things that we covered. So first we covered what is Flutter. We saw that Flutter is a UI toolkit that was made by the Google team, and the whole reason why Flutter was made was to solve the problems that we have with app development when it comes to supporting a variety of different platforms and versions. Two, we saw why we can use Flutter because one, we saw the performance of hot reload. We can make layouts and develop our app really fast. We can make good use of the open source community and get all the resources we need to start developing Flutter apps. And also we saw how it's very appealing to be able to develop for different platforms, like for the web, mobile, and desktop. This means that you as a software developer will have more opportunities, whether you want to get a job as a Flutter developer, or maybe you've got your own hustles and you want to do your own apps or start your own businesses. Flutter is great because you just need to use one code base for that. We also walked through setting up a Flutter development environment. We saw the long and more detailed way of doing it from the Flutter docs, and for us, like people that want to take things a bit easy, we saw how people have made an open source Flutter installer that was actually built with Flutter, and using that we were able to install Android Studio and the Flutter SDK, and from there we were able to create a Flutter app and we ran it on our emulator. So yeah, we covered a lot. Thank you very much for tuning in and listening to this introduction to Flutter. I know that you might have a lot of questions, so I'll be in the chat, so feel free to leave your questions and I'll answer them. And that's it from me. So hope you guys continue enjoying the rest of the stream, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Take care.